We have Matt Taibbi, writer. What is your official title for Rolling Stone magazine, Matt?
Contributing editor.
Contributing editor. Very impressive.
Yeah, that's the title. How's it going, Sam?
It's going pretty good. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, you've got a piece that's coming out on the whole healthcare brouhaha in Washington next week. I haven't seen the piece yet because obviously it's not out, but give me a little taste of what you're talking about in this piece.
Yeah, basically we kind of lay out the whole history of the bill and kind of make the case that there's nothing left in it. The way we looked at it was, that they kind of systematically chipped away at everything meaningful in the bill, and I spent about a month or a month and a half talking to various members of Congress and trying to get a sense of, all the various, details in the bill that, all of the legislative maneuvers that they use to try to suck the meaning out of healthcare reform. And so we kind of went into a lot of detail about each of the different versions of the bill and kind of what's left right now.
So what is it? I mean, give me a sense of what has been taken out that you think essentially guts the bill's effectiveness. I mean, this to be said, at this point, what we have is a bunch of different bills coming out of a bunch of different committees,
right.
And theoretically they can be strengthened.
Anything can happen.
Exactly. I mean, we could all get struck by lightning, and I could win $1 million.
Right.
But
the conference process in Congress kind of allows. They could wake up, 3 months from now, and suddenly everybody could decide that they want to have a single payer system, and they could put that in the conference. So until this thing is over, we have no idea exactly what's going to be in it. But the tea leaves are kind of out there to see what's going to be, what's going to be in the bill that they're going to send to the floor. I mean, even though, there's a strong public option, for instance, in the Ways and Means Committee version and in the Education and Labor Committee version of the bill, it's the Energy and Commerce Committee version that is the one that they are going to use if they use it at all. And that one has been gutted pretty seriously. So even though we don't really know what's in it, we have there's some indication that certain versions of it are going to have more precedence than others.
All right. Well, give me a sense of what are some of the key elements that you feel have been sort of been gutted from these bills.
Okay. Well, first of all, single payer isn't it? I mean, even though there's an amendment that Anthony Weiner here in New York is going to be introducing as a substitute bill that would replace the entire bill with a single payer system, and that is going to make it to the floor. They have a promise from the leadership that they're not going to take it out in the Rules Committee or anything like that. So that actually will be voted on, but it's not going to pass. Obviously, it's more really there for show. But
we've known single payer is basically DOA since basically the primary.
Basically, everybody I talked to said that this was a handshake deal between the White House and the health insurance and / pharmaceutical industry, and they kind of made a deal before this process even started that said, we're going to take single payer off the table, and in return, you're not going to hammer us like you did during the Clinton, healthcare effort. And that's kind of what happened. Not only was single payer not seriously entertained, they didn't even allow people to testify on behalf of single payer. When Max Baucus held the first roundtables in the Senate Finance Committee on health care reform, he invited 41 witnesses to testify, and not one of them was a single payer advocate. And when some single payer advocates showed up and tried to get themselves into the hearing, he had them arrested and taken away. So single payer was never there. And then the next step. What?
Should have come with guns. Apparently, that's the only way you get to hang around those type of events now.
Exactly. So with single payer was off the table. The game really became the public option.
Well, we knew this single payer was off the table. I mean, during the primary campaign when there was no, between Clinton and Obama, when both of them basically said we're not doing single payer. I mean, so. What during this process has really been eliminated? I mean, because I'm not even playing devil's advocate here. There are a lot of things supposedly that we're told are good reforms. things like you're going to have regulations going to prevent insurance companies from prohibiting people with pre-existing conditions.
Right. That's going to end up being the signature thing in the whole bill, by the way.
What's that?
That's going to end up being the big reform in the whole bill, I think. But anyway.
Right, and there's some value there.
Oh yeah.
It does nothing to curb costs in any way.
Right.
And it does nothing necessarily to ensure. I mean, maybe it ensures more people will be there. And there's supposedly some rescission provisions. You can't take away people's health insurance once they get sick as easily. I mean, those are the two big things I think that are on the positive side here. What are other things that you feel like have basically eviscerated the bills that we're going to see?
Well, what are the two biggest problems in our healthcare system are what? The paperwork and the cost. And
right.
You can't do anything about the paperwork if you don't have a public if you don't have single payer. So that's 30% of the cost of healthcare in this country, and they just ignored that. So the next thing is the cost, and the way they were going to address the cost is with a public option. Now, in order to have the public option be meaningful, it has to be significantly cheaper than private insurance. And the original versions that they had, the ones in the Education and Labor Committee and in the Ways and Means Committee that they developed, they were real public options, and the prices that they would have been, dictating to providers would have been based on Medicaid rates plus 5%. So it would have been significantly cheaper than private insurance, and this would have been something that anybody who was unemployed, or who wasn't offered good insurance by their employers would have been able to buy, and it would have driven down costs of health insurance across the board. It would have been fantastic. But at the last minute, the Blue Dogs kind of revolted, and they kind of tweaked the way the language is written, and now it's not Medicaid plus 5%, it's the Health and Human Services Secretary has to negotiate directly with providers, which is basically going to end up making the public option cost the same as private insurance. So it's a public option, but it's not really a public option in the end. And that was the really big killer thing that really undermined healthcare.
Because the benefit of the public option is that it essentially piggybacks on pre-existing government insurance programs and
right.
leverages the volume to get those type of rates.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and
when you decouple that, you're essentially just creating another insurance company and losing all the benefit of the government actually running this program.
Right, exactly. Now you basically have a government-run organization that isn't going to have any of the benefits of being a government, a government-offered health insurance policy. It's kind of ridiculous. So it's the problem all along that the Blue Dogs and the conservatives had, and they openly said this, is that the problem with the public option is just too efficient. It costs too little, and private insurance won't be able to survive. So they killed it. And,
it's not fair. It's anti-competitive because it
right.
does so well that the other programs won't survive, that the private industry will not survive.
What's
which is
really
sort
interesting
of
about
just a shockingly bizarre argument to make.
It's very, very strange, and it's strange that they made it out in the open like it made sense too. It was a very strange thing to see. But even weirder was the fact. It was the way they ended up getting that change in the public option. I mean, the Blue Dogs, who are these, deficit hawks, these guys who are against raising costs, adding to the budget, they objected to the public option on the grounds that it didn't compensate rural doctors enough. So what they basically did is they added a gigantic piece of government pork to the bill. And these are the guys who are, their whole mantra is getting rid of government pork. So it was an amazing kind of about face that they used to undermine the public option, and it didn't make any sense in reality. But politically, everybody understood what was going on.
It was also sort of a poison pill, wasn't it, in some way? I mean, if they lard it up enough, then it doesn't show any savings, and then what's the point of having it?
Right, exactly. I think that's what everybody's, I think the initial plan that the White House might have had was, hey, let's just pass a public option in some form or another, and down the road maybe we'll fix it and we'll make it a real public option later on. Whereas I think the other side is thinking, hey, let's pass a public option and it'll suck, and we'll end up having to go back to the old system because this is going to give government-run insurance a bad name. I think that's a genuine kind of stratagem that both sides are thinking of right now.
Well, so if we get the public option now, even with that notion that you're not going to leverage the volume business, essentially, that the government does, there is a chance that later down the road that can be improved, right?
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible also that that a lot of people think that's sort of what the White House is thinking, that they're going to pass it in whatever form now, and if they get enough of a balance in either this year's elections or next year's elections, that they'll go back and work on it again. But it's just, that kind of incrementalism is a little bit strange, considering they have these massive majorities in both houses. That they didn't really need to do that. So,
but you can't really do anything bold until you have 103 senators, I guess. Who
yeah,
are
exactly.
All one party.
Exactly.
We just have a minute, but what do you think about what you've been seeing out of the Progressive Caucus in the House? I mean, they're basically saying we need a public option, or we're not going to vote for this.
Yeah, I think that would be, if they ended up pulling their support for the bill because there's no public option in it. It would be kind of an important moment in American political history, actually, because when somebody suggested to Nancy Pelosi that maybe the progressives might not vote for this bill if it didn't have a public option, she literally laughed out loud, when reporters asked her that. And this notion that the progressives have been, are being taken for granted has been so ingrained for so long, and that's part of the reason that we're in this mess, is that the White House doesn't take the progressives seriously. But if they actually revolt, and I know for a fact that at least 50 members of the House will not vote for it if there's no public option, and there's a handful that I can count in the Senate who also won't vote for it. If that happens, it'll be a big deal. It'll force the White House for the first time to really take the progressives seriously.
50 in the House would be all that it would take. I mean, assuming you don't get any Republicans who are going to vote for it.
Yeah, no, and it could be more than 50. It could be 100. I mean, it could be that many.
All right, Matt Taibbi, thank you very much. Look forward to this piece coming out in Rolling Stone next week. Always a pleasure to talk to you.